Thank you for tuning in to another edition of the Business of Fun podcast. I am your host, Dave Wakeman, and today's episode is brought to you by my good friends at Booking Protect, the global leaders in refund protection. Any listing, any sector, anywhere, Booking Protect has you covered with the world's most comprehensive refund protection product. To find out how you and your organization can partner with Booking Protect to deliver world-class customer service, visit them at www.bookingprotect.com. Now, I'm going to trick you here because I'm going to change up the intro just a bit, because this week Booking Protect and I have launched a brand new ebook called What Matters in Tickets Now, and this thing is really, really cool. It is 40 people from all over the world offering their ideas about what's important in tickets now. You'll recognize some of the names because they've been on the podcast before. So, obviously I'm in there. Simon Mab has a nice introduction and where the idea came from. Kate M. Rotkowski, she's there. Richard Howell gives a really great idea. Tony Knopp, if you saw the LinkedIn post I posted, he had a really thoughtful thing about what it means because of the legal right to own a ticket and what ownership means of a ticket. That's a really great one. Andrew Thomas from the Ticketing Professionals Conference, an INTIX board member. It's a really, really great collection. I think Kate M. Rotkowski, she sent me a note after I shared it with her because she contributed, and she's like, "Oh, if people put this thing to use, they would have like the coolest venue ever." And so I hope they would sell a lot of tickets too. So go to the Booking Protect website. It's www.bookingprotect.com /blog with another backsplash at the end. And it will take you to the top of the page where you can download the ebook, What Matters in Ticketing Now. As an added bonus, we are going to announce a webinar that goes along in conjunction with the launch of the ebook. That's going to be, mark your calendars, February 26th. I still have to make sure about a couple of details, like the timing of the thing and everything, but it's going to be February 26th. It's Wednesday. I'm going to try to make it at a time that's convenient or as convenient for people all over the world as possible. It's going to be awesome, though. It's going to be great. It's going to be takeaways, big themes, and action items that you can use to put to work for your organization. The best way to find out all the details about this is going to be to sign up for the Talking Tickets newsletter. And you can do that by visiting my website at davewakeman.com. And there will be a link for Get the Talking Tickets newsletter. Sign up there, and I'll hook you up. Now, my guest today is a repeat guest, a guy by the name of Ken Troupe. And I wanted to have Ken back because Ken is teaching some classes on revenue and sports marketing, and he asked me if I would Skype into his class, which will, as we post this podcast on January 30th, will be tomorrow. And what happened was I was talking through what Ken wanted to do in 2020 with him. What he wanted to do personally, professionally, for his students, with his clients. And he said one of the things that he wanted to focus on was making 2020 a year of thinking differently. And so I asked him to explain that to me because, a lot of times we have these concepts and ideas that are great on the surface, but they don't have a lot of meat to them. And so I said, well, if you're serious about this and you have some good ideas around this, let's turn it into a podcast, right? Because this podcast this is episode 98. I'm going to put up episode 99 shortly, so they'll come pretty close together over the next couple days. And episode 100 is going to be kind of a relaunch of the podcast and a mission statement for me going forward. There'll be a special guest. I can't tell you who it is, but if you have a guess, tweet it at me at David Wakeman on the Twitters. But so I wanted to have Ken on to talk about this idea of the year of thinking differently. And so you'll hear in the conversation, I kind of push him on the idea a little bit, because I wanted him and all of you to understand what thinking differently means, it looks like, and I wanted to put a little bit more meat on it. Because sometimes we say, hey, look, we're going to market. And what does that really mean? Or we're going to sell. What does that really mean? We're going to do all these things, and we don't necessarily always know exactly what they mean. And so I push Ken. And we talked about what thinking differently means, what it looks like, how to break things down, how to break down goals, how to use your network as a resource, how to create memories, things that work, things that don't work. I think this may be a pretty interesting conversation for everybody because of how I was able to push Ken to dig deeper on the idea. And I don't know that I've always done that on the podcast in a way that helps you see the way somebody can dig deeper on an idea. I forget who uses this concept or where I learned this thing, but it's about taking a second or third step in the thinking, like thinking to the third degree, right? So there's an idea, it has an immediate consequence, but go in 2 or 3 steps deeper on the way you think about things. So I will be excited to hear what you think about this conversation that I had with Ken Troupe on the Business of Fun.
All right, I want to welcome back to the Business of Fun podcast my friend Ken Troupe. Ken, how's it going?
Great, Dave. How you doing today?
Oh man, I'm all right. It is a winter day in DC. It is very cold, and so my office is cold in the winter and hot in the summer no matter what I do, so it's a little chilly up here right now.
Yeah.
So it goes. Now,
well, it's springtime here in Dallas, but it's fixing to storm and be cold in the morning, maybe snow here on Saturday, so, we'll catch up to DC at some point.
Yeah, you don't want that. You want to leave us far behind is what I'm telling you.
I like a little wintry mix. It's good for running. Good running weather.
Yeah, I don't know that this 20 degrees with like a little bit of wind is perfect running weather or not. But so it goes. Now, it's the start of 2020, and what I've been doing the last couple of days is I've been having people on who are talking about either data, trends, new ideas for the new year. So I wanted to have you on because you called me up while I was on the treadmill the other day, and you said, I'm going to do the year of thinking differently this year, Dave. And I said, well, explain it to me. And you did. And I said, well, we should talk about this on the podcast. So explain to everybody what the year of thinking differently to Ken Troupe means.
I think the year of thinking differently for me is just the fact that, I've always been one that has tried to push the envelope on, how can we do things different? How can we change the status quo? How can we improve and things like that? And I know in the sports business and entertainment business, so many of us get complacent with, we're doing okay. We're hitting some good numbers. We're kind of just treading along. But without thinking about what's coming next and how can we push the envelope and things like that. And I think I want to encourage people, my whole process is to try to encourage people to really push that envelope and get out there on the limb a little bit more to, do things differently to increase revenue, to do things differently to increase, staff engagement, do things differently to increase fan engagement and things like that. And just really kind of think about every day, how can I improve the process? How can I improve things that are working?
A, no one can argue with. But B, it also falls into a bit of a trap that a lot of us deal with all the time where it sounds like a bunch of buzzwordy, kind of meaningless stuff. So can you put a little bit of meat on the bones? When you talk about thinking and acting differently, what does that entail? How are you going to challenge yourself and by turn challenge other people to do that so that it moves past buzzwords and, BS, moves from the land of motivational speaking into something that people can really apply. And I ask that not to be a jerk, because you know that, but more because I think people struggle because they have the best intentions, but then they don't necessarily know how to take action on those intentions.
Yeah. Well, I think, kind of taking from your playbook really to script things out and really always have hey, here's what I'm going to do. Here's what's working. First you want to do is you want to document everything that's working, right? And things where, that have been the same or been working over the course of a number of seasons, a number of years or whatever, right? And then think about, okay, what can I do to enhance these 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 items that do well, but are changing, right? And identify those items that you think are changing or could be changing, right? And then really just script them out. Like, okay, here's what I want to do in the first 3 months. I want to tackle 2 of those items on that list. In 6 months, I want to tackle 6 of those items, and really kind of understand where you are at the beginning of the year and where you want to be at the end of the year. I think is the first step that you need to take to think about, thinking differently is identifying what you're doing now, right, and identifying opportunities that you could improve, right?
Let me ask you this thing too, because you brought it up in a way that I've found unique and helpful, and it's something I learned from 2 people, 2 friends of the podcast, one who's been on, one who has not. Rob Cressy, who does Bacon Sports podcast, sports marketing, and then there's a lady called Dory Clark who wrote a great book called Entrepreneurial You, and they talked about breaking their goals up into. Rob is doing it about a quarter, and Dory does it like over 6 months. And you said break them up like by quarters or 6 months and figure out where you wanted to be. Tell me in your point of view, why that's so valuable to you, and then because. It does make sense to me because I think a year may be too far or too long to think or not long enough to think about certain things. And if you have like a ticket sales goal like you're talking about, it could be too long to think about things because you probably don't have that long and your season's maybe only 4 to 6 months long. So like thinking a year is completely unproductive.
Yeah, no, I agree. That's why I like the quarters. But even when you identify, okay, here's where I want to be in a quarter, April 1st, I want to be here, you still then take that next 3 months and kind of break it down, either by documenting it. Here's the steps that I need to take to be there. So it's kind of a mini breakdown within that quarter, right? And I love this approach and this strategy because I've always been a big goal setter, right? And really documenting and thinking about where you want to be. I think the other thing to really encourage everybody, Dave, is to think about, okay, here's what I want to change, but here's why the justification is, so you can justify it with your boss and your owners for sure, right? And then secondly, how is this going to impact 6 months from now, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, and things like that. One of the frustrations that I've always seen is there's a lot of people that potentially, try to think differently or try to do things differently, but they think about only short term and then checking that box that I've achieved it, but not really understanding what the ramifications of that subtle change could be, right? We've talked a lot about, on LinkedIn, LinkedIn has changed their model and they're really encouraging people to share content and really share video, right? And there's a lot of, folks that are, on video and sharing video and things like that. And you can see sometimes where, there's me and you watched this last year, a sales rep for a club that really kind of dove right in with video really heavily, early in the year, and then he would kind of, petered off throughout the season, probably because he was encouraged to do it. He thought it was a good idea, but he didn't really have an end game on where it was going to take him, right?
Yeah, that's exactly right. I know exactly what you're talking about.
If you commit to it and you're going to do it, you have to understand what the end game is, right?
Oh, absolutely. And one thing that you brought up that I think is I think deserves a follow up too is like you talked about being a very big goal setter and putting the goals in context. And one thing that I know that I probably rant about more than I probably should, or maybe far too regularly, but how do you measure progress, right? And it's I've just finished a book. Because everybody who listens knows I read a lot of books, called Fearless Leadership by a guy called Alan Weiss. And he talked about making sure you're measuring things that are important. And I know that in sales and marketing, it becomes very easy to measure stuff that's easy to measure but has no impact on the bottom line or where you're trying to go as far as achieving your goals. So then when you're thinking about setting goals and measuring your progress towards the achievement of the goals, how do you do it? And how do you frame it in a way that it is meaningful and it, moves you towards an outcome that you want to achieve, as opposed to just like, well, I made 100 cold calls today, so I must be doing great.
Well, if you made 100 cold calls today, you're doing it wrong. You need to think differently, right? So let me ask you, what do you think the number one in sales, like in ticket sales, what do you think the number one, kind of target or focus of your sales staff or achievement of your sales staff that most sales managers are missing, right? That salespeople now want to achieve? What do you think the number one goal is that people are missing, that managers and leaders are missing when they talk to their sales teams?
Well, I think that probably the number one thing, and I don't know if this is answering your question or not, but the number one thing that the sales manager should be measuring is, selling time, right? So it's like how much time you're spending on conversations with prospects or with customers. I'm not exactly sure if I'm answering your question, but to me, that's the most important thing, right? It's not necessarily how much time you're spending prospecting, because if you're spending a lot of time prospecting, or you're just spending a lot of time in meetings, that aren't leading to talking to customers or prospects, then to me, you're failing, right? Because that's got to be where your emphasis is if your full-time job is selling.
Yeah, no, I get that, totally measuring how much time you're actually actively selling. I guess my question was, let me refine it, what element that a sales rep looks for in their career right now that a lot of managers are missing. And I'll answer it for you. I think I think leadership in general is doing a bad job now of leaning into career development and really helping, the entry level, the mid-level sales manage and grow their career, right?
That's a long-term theme of the podcast here is focusing on helping the kids get a career path. That should definitely be at the forefront.
And we've all seen it in real time the last 6 or 8 or 10 years, right? Of this idea of now everybody's about job hopping, right? Getting whatever I can do right now to get to that next job, right? So that's what kids, and that's what sales reps, and that's what, up and coming young professionals in the sports business want. They want to know, how can I get to my next job, right? How can I get my first promotion and things like that.
And to me, it's faulty, right? Sorry to cut you off, but this is a bad idea, because every time somebody leaves your organization, if they're successful enough to move to another job, you lose all of that institutional value, all that knowledge about the marketplace, all these things. It's just it's an awful business model.
I will tell you the other side of that coin, though, is if you're known as someone who's a great place to start your career because you're going to get given and taught the tools and shown the roadmap on how you can advance your career, then you're going to get better talent on the front side because people want to come work for you because they know you're a thought leader and a brand builder and helping kids and helping young professionals carve out a path. Right.
Well, so I think a balance, I think, in this, right? And but there's not, there isn't there should be a balance. A. B, in most instances, and I would say probably upwards of 90% of the instances, there is no balance, right? There is no, because to me, it's ridiculous. And if anybody's listening to this, I would tell them to go back and listen to Tony Knopp's episode when we talked about this again in depth. But if you're turning over 99% of your sales team every year, it's not their fault, it's yours, right? That's a leadership issue, right? That's a business model issue. That's a training and development and hiring issue. It's not an issue of the kids. Because I'm telling you that if you're losing 99% of the kids every year that you're hiring, it's not their fault. It's your fault. You're not either putting the kids in a position to be successful. You're not giving them the tools they need to be successful. Maybe you're not training them. You're not hiring the right kids. You're not doing a lot of stuff.
Yeah.
And it's a bad business model.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're in a situation where you're losing 99% of your staff, the first question is why? When you empower, and put your staff on a path to be successful, whether it's in sales or leadership or career growth or whatever, they're going to get better buy-in for you and they're going to work harder. Not everybody wants to be on that track that wants to leave you and be a VP by the time they're 31, right? But a lot of them just want to be good sellers, right? So you're going to get a balance. Obviously, you got to over-rotate. If you're over-rotating one direction where everybody's leaving you, if they're all leaving you for fantastic jobs and they're all taking great opportunities and things like that, that might be a different conversation. But if they're leaving just because they're kind of pinched or bottlenecked or whatever, they don't feel like you're giving them support or buy-in or whatever, then that's a problem. So, the balance for sure. I want to encourage people to push that envelope a little bit from a leadership position and try to empower your people more and try to give them the the freedom to be a true brand ambassador for your club, right? And, be out there and be active in the community and be building relationships and be giving, working on the tools they need to be more successful, whether it's with you or another organization.
Right. And one of the things I always tell people is that because there's sort of a tendency to be like, well, if I'm so good at developing people, then there's no place for me. And I go, there's always a place for somebody who can develop the next group of leaders. It's just completely always room for that person. And I think one of the challenges is that people look at the development of their team and their employees and other, the next set of leaders in the wrong way. Right? And it's just like, oh, I want to be indispensable. No, I want to be, and this is me speaking, not just the universal we or anything, me. When I was in roles, and it took me a long time to figure this out, right? And now it's easy because it's just me. But before, when I worked in organizations, I wanted to make it so that if I got hit by a bus, somebody could fill in for me and the organization would keep moving forward. And that's kind of, a little morbid way to look at it, but that was sort of the way I thought. If something happened to me, I didn't want it to be like, oh my God, there's nothing we can do now without me. I wanted it to be the exact opposite, that everything could go on without me. And I learned that from doing things the other way, where I was the focal point and the center of attention, and it was great for my ego, but it was awful for business results, ultimately.
Yeah, we talk about that topic a lot in my management class at SMU about, like, you can't manage scared, right? Like, you can't lead scared. And we've all been there. We've all had bosses that lead scared, right? They don't want to give you too much information because they're fearful you're going to take their job. Like, your goal should be to give them the tools to take your job, to be able to backfill if something happened. If you got hit by a bus, it's funny you said that because I use that analogy all the time. Like, if you get hit by a bus, is somebody going to be able to pick up the pieces and run with it and help your organization, And
the other thing is like it allows you, or it should allow you and give you the freedom to work on bigger and better stuff, more interesting challenges. In theory.
Yeah. No, absolutely. If you're giving too much, if you're giving the information for someone to take your job and they actually take your job, then you're not doing your job well enough, right? Like, you need to have the best leaders in this industry. I think we can agree are ones that are, continually building and backfilling and making the industry better, making the organization better for when they leave, they're in a better spot than when, right? And their staff's in a better spot than when they got there, and they're kind of moving and climbing up that. I think where we get in trouble sometimes is those ones that think about the status quo and just staying, I've got my VP job at 32. I'm cool. I'm just going to hang here. I'm just going to do the job. I'm going to hit the numbers. I'm just going to, mildly just kind of tread water and, enjoy the perks of working for a big team or whatever in my town.
Right. At 32, if you're treading water, I feel for you.
But I know it's true. Like sometimes
I do know it's true.
Are definitely thinking about what can I do right now to get get promoted and go to another club and be a CMO or or chief revenue officer, whatever, by the time I'm 40. And you're not thinking about the mentality of you want to leave your organization, you want to leave your staff in a better place than you found them all the time is not necessarily, believed by everybody in this industry, I think.
Well, I wouldn't disagree with that. Now, let me ask you something else, right? Because I know another idea that is really, really close to your heart this year, along with thinking and acting differently, is you are a big fan and proponent, and you brought it up a little bit about being a brand ambassador, and then you talked about the example of the salesperson who was making videos with seemingly no rhyme nor reason to them, but social selling, right?
Yeah.
A lot of times when I hear the term, right, first I think all selling is social, so it's a little bit of a, again, buzzword. But how do you define social selling for people so that, like, you can, again, take this thing from some meaningless buzzword and put a little bit of, like, clarity around it, define social selling through Ken Troupe's eyes for me.
Yeah, first of all, I think anybody that touches revenue, whether it's on sales side, premium sales, marketing, or whatever, sponsorship, should have an understanding of how they can use social networking or social channels to build their brand and build their network, right? That's the number one thing. I think a lot of folks still don't understand that and still kind of struggle with the idea of thinking about the idea of, connections. Back in the day, I used to tell my sales team, look, get out and get involved in the community because you're selling sports, you're selling fun, you're selling happiness, and, experience, you're selling, employee outings, things like that. Anybody's a contact. Anybody's a potential buyer because you're selling, fun, right? And entertainment. So get out and get involved in the community. Go to church if that's your thing. Play in a softball league if that's your thing. Go to a bowling league, get a running club, get out there and be social and active and have a network. So now the same thing should be applied to your social media channels, right? You should be active and you should be, sharing content. This whole idea on LinkedIn right now of like LinkedIn is still, it's a great tool. I love LinkedIn, right? And it's a great way to build your network. But everybody thinks about building their network to land their next job and not really building their network to do their current job well, right? And
LinkedIn, I think, too, and I'm curious about this from, and I'm probably cutting off the social selling question to jump in with another one, but people use LinkedIn poorly. Full stop.
Absolutely.
And I think that like we all have to get out of this mindset of it's just a platform for me to take from or to blast, which I know goes into social selling. But again, I think I jumped on your toes there a little bit.
You should be the ideal LinkedIn profile, the ideal social profile for me is you should be a resource to your network, right? Like if you sell premium in a big city, and what do you do at the end of the day? You help clubs or you help businesses in your market, fix business, have business solutions and fix problems, right? Mm-hmm. Like retention or how do you attract top candidates, things like that. So instead of sharing content that says, hey, this is what I offer and this is how it could, you should be talking about the whole space in general of like, hey, here's what the best organizations do to retain employees. Here's what the best organizations do to find new employees. Here's the best continuing education programs that top Fortune 500 companies do, mm-hmm. right? And by happenstance, your solution happens to fall into, something that these best do, right? And it's pretty subtle. It's not always talking about me, and what I can do. It's talking about the industry, the space that I'm in, the hospitality space that I'm in as an overarching thing, and how can I community. Who out there for a club is a seller is out there that has a coffee group together of other industry professionals talking about hospitality, right? Talking about marketing for, widget companies and marketing for, hospitality and sports teams and things like that. Like, build your network. We're all really good on LinkedIn and building our network within the sports entertainment. But how are you good at building your network within the hospitality and client retention space?
Right. Well, I think we and I would if I'm being generous with myself, I guess that's the way I'll put it. Then I think I do a fairly competent job of being a content marketer, which I guess would be a synonym for social selling in a way. And I've always viewed it as like being a bit of a teacher and an educator. And I have a huge network of folks, right? And, a lot of it exists online. But with the Talking Tickets newsletter, right? Like every week I tell you where I'm going to be so that way I can take this online aspect of networking offline. And like you said, if you're in a big city or a small city, any city, and there's hotels and restaurants and bars and all these people, get a group together of people who are all targeting the same industry or the same kind of buyers, because it's not like you're the only game in town, right? Yeah. It's not like they're always just going to go to one restaurant, right? No, that's unrealistic. It's like work together to be able to fully serve the people that you're trying to serve, because you're going to get better prospects. You're going to get more and better prospects by being wise about building a network offline with people in your industry that are focusing on things, right?
Yes.
And doing crazy stuff. I mean, I went to Melbourne, Australia last year. I know that anybody that's been listening for any period of time have heard me talk about Australia for 6 months. But I'm going to tell one more story. And it was like, I was there in Melbourne with Derek Palmer, who is I forget exactly what his role is. I think he's the board chair of INTIX, or he will be, for at least a couple days or something. I don't know, whatever. But I was there with Derek Palmer, and we were talking about putting together a group of people in Melbourne who are all in sports and entertainment, who are trying to reach together. Don't try to solve all these problems alone. Don't just operate in a bubble. Get out, get together. That's social selling to me.
Well, the biggest problem is, hey, if I work in cricket, I can't be friends with somebody that works in rugby because, if I expose my potential client to a different sport, they might go there. Like you have to have the strength and the understanding that you're going to lose, some of these clients that you work with to other entertainment opportunities in the town or in the market every once in a while. I used to, in the group sales business, right? Like the big company picnic is the big home run, right? You want them to buy 2,000 tickets for their company outing, but you have to be confident to know that, hey, I'm not going to get them every year. It's okay if you go to Six Flags, or it's okay you go to, another opportunity in town, every other year, whatever, as long as I give you the best service I can when you're with me, I know you're going to come back the next year. And I know I'm going to have a chance.
I can get referrals. There might be other people in the business that want to do something similar. I mean, there's all kinds of opportunities there.
Yeah. The key is to always be backfilling, so when that big group, that big mammoth, picnic goes somewhere else that year, you got another 2 or 3 or 4 that are backfilling that same year, and they're hopscotching over, and then every once in a while they hit on the same year, and your group numbers really move,
Yeah, and by the same sort of element, there's also this idea, too, that I don't want to expose myself or my clients to an industry or a different segment of the industry, right? Like, so I'm competing against, my idea of what hospitality is or services or something, it only is in this bubble I live in, right? And so you're a little concerned about maybe sharing and exposing people to the level of service at like the Four Seasons or at the St. Regis or at the Marriott Marquis or any of these different organizations. And I see it all the time when I go to places, right? I don't want to name any names, but their idea of what great service is, targeting someone who's like me, right, is completely disconnected from what I view good service is. And I think that, and then I talk to people because all the time, people I know who are similar to me, right, who, have a higher net worth and have all these things going for them, are going, this doesn't meet my needs. And I tell the teams, I go, hey, look, this is a challenge that somebody brought to my attention. I wanted you to know. And then they just go and they stick their heads in the sand. You can't do that, right? Because you don't exist in a bubble, right? Just because I expect a premium level of service, just because you call it premium doesn't mean it's premium. You have to know what you exist in.
Yeah. Well, I had a really good answer for the path you were taking me down, then you kind of dribbled off at the end. But I was going to say that the same discussion we just had about managing, fearfully and not giving your staff the tools to be successful is the same way when you're selling. You can't sell with the idea that, oh man, I might lose them to somebody else. Yes, you're going to lose them to somebody else potentially. That's part of the game.
You might even want to lose them to somebody else. They might not be a good fit for you anymore. You might be doing them a service.
Absolutely. That gets back to my core of selling. Sell people what they want to buy first. That's the biggest key for me in selling is sell them what they want to buy. Whether it's a smaller package or, over the moon package, right? Sell them what they want to buy and you're going to get better buy-in from them. You're going to get more referrals. You're going to get, people that, hey, my company's got to go here this year, but my other buddy in my network has a similar company and he's looking for someplace for his picnic and he can also come, he'll go to you. So, don't fear with them. Don't sell with the idea that I might lose them. Sell with the idea of, I'm going to give them the absolutely best product, experience, service at the time and the moment, and then, worry about and think about what's going to happen after that.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I think that, again, it's like leading scared. You can't sell scared either. You have to.
Yeah.
You have to know that you're doing the best you can, to provide the best service and experience that you can, and that you're focused on the customer first and providing value. And that if that doesn't line up with what the person needs, there's not necessarily something you can always do about that.
But here's the catch, Dave. You gotta actually buy in. You actually have to do that. You actually have to sell to your best abilities. You have to service to your best abilities. And sometimes we don't do that. I was listening to a podcast or a TED Talk yesterday, that was, a gentleman talking about, he runs a hotel in LA, right? And he was talking about your goal is to create memories, just like these micro memories. Give them a reason to want to experience and come back. Once you sell something, the process is not over. It's about creating great experiences and fulfilling that on the back end. So when they're in your ballpark, your stadium, your arena, you're actually, giving them a reason to want to come back. I used to, my buddy Colin Faulkner, who's at the Cubs now, and I, back in the day at the Rangers Stars, I had this approach, and we both did it. We went up to the upper level, and my goal was, I've always had this philosophy, if I can win one fan at a time, I'm doing my job, right? And I would go to the upper tank. There was one game, there was a rain-out, make-up, midweek game for the Rangers. There might have been, 8,000 people in the stadium total for this random Thursday game, in September or whatever. I walked the upper level, and I shook every hand. And and people go, oh, how do you shake hands? What do you say? All you have to say is, hey, I'm Ken with the Rangers. I just want to thank you for coming out to the ballpark today. Do you have any questions I can answer? That's all you have to say. And then I'm good, thanks, and just move on. We all forget when you're in the sports business just how cool it is to go to a building, right, and have the opportunity to be in a stadium, right? And if someone from the front office of that organization comes up and say, hey, thanks for coming. We appreciate your business. Can I shake your hand? That's a win for me, and that's always been a win for me, and that's what this TED Talk was talking about, creating these little wins when someone's experiencing your product to make them want to come back and make them want to talk about you, right? And we forget about that, and we're not doing that, as much as we should be.
Well, I think that part of this, and this is something I've heard from working with people in all kinds of industries, is that the reason people aren't doing that too is they're worried that they're going to get some sort of negative feedback. And I go, it's maybe true, right? But the thing is that it's great when you get negative feedback because then it's something that you may not know is going on. And then number two, if you solve it, then you look like a champion. Because as soon as somebody comes up to you and says there's something wrong, you fix it. You go out of your way to fix it. And then you know that hey, if one person's having this problem, it might be going on for a lot of people and they never make a complaint about it. They just don't show up.
That's great point. There's a couple of tangents I could go there. One is that's why I believe in having a social network and listening to your social network because it used to be back in the day you'd walk down into a seating bowl and you get dark eyes just staring at you. Oh, that's the guy that wouldn't let me get the extra hot dog for my kid or whatever, bad experience. And they talked about it with their little seat group, right? And then you would come down there and you just get bombed with, hey, we're mad. Now with social channels and a lot of people are sharing experiences in real time. This is why big Fortune 500 companies listen to Twitter, right? Because they try to put out fires in real time, right? It happened to me the other day with a bad experience at a Chinese restaurant on Christmas Eve. I tweeted about it and it's right away, and you have the opportunity to put out fires in real time. But if you're not putting out fires, all they're going to do is fester and fester and fester, and then you're going to have a problem or a movement, right, that you can't put out.
Yeah, the worst emotion that you evoke is apathy, right? So you screw something up and people are just like, it's fine. These people suck. I'll just go do something else next time. That's the worst thing. Is I want people either to be happy enough that they're talking about how much they love it, or if something's wrong, angry enough to tell me so I can fix it. Right? Yeah. I don't want to create apathy, right? Well, which is, I think, a really, smart lesson for everybody, right? It's you don't want to be milk toast.
Yeah. The other thing to really think about, empowering your people to solve problems, right? a lot of people don't want to step into a problem because they're not empowered to fix it, right? I was talking to a 25-year-old sales rep the other day, and she was telling me that in her arena she witnessed, a guy had a beer like spilt, like, and it went all down the kids, like the 8-year-old kids just drenched the kid in beer, right? So she immediately went up to the merchandise shop, got a new hoodie, went down there, presented it to the kid, sorry about it, brought him some towels, brought him a new hoodie. Like, and she goes, I'm not empowered to do that. I just figured I'd worry about it after the fact, and talk to my boss about, hey, can I expense this? But that's great customer service. And now every time she's individual, this kid, he always wearing that hoodie at the games, every time without fail. And that's a moment that she saw a bad, potentially bad customer service experience, and she turned it into a positive, and she just did it on her own, and she was empowered to do it. Well, she wasn't necessarily empowered to do it. She just did it, and then went to her boss after and said, hey, this is what I did. Hopefully the boss supported her and said, yeah, 100%, great job, expense it, yada, yada, yada.
Yeah, no, I mean, I can't speak strongly enough on the need to empower people to do things, because I think that if you put faith in people, more often than not, they're going to make a wise decision. And I am doing, INTIX is coming up as we're doing this in about 10 days. And I'm going to be doing a panel at INTIX on customer service as the best form of marketing, right? And the people that are going to be on this panel, these examples are exactly what they lead with, right? So it's like, take the time to understand and have empathy for your customer and treat them the way you would want to be treated. When I was in, again, another Australia story, when I was in Australia, the thing I taught people was that, like, as you're approaching a customer, right, in a customer service interaction, think about it and put it in the context of, how would you feel if this happened to you? Or how would you feel if this happened to your family or your mom? And it'll usually change the way you make decisions if you put it in that context.
Yeah. I'll build on that. Always think about that's that fan's first interaction, first experience at your stadium every time. Yeah. If you think about it like that, I was at a game last night, and they had hey, we win, you get free chicken at the local chicken shop, right? Which is a standard activation, right? Yeah. But on their drop, they're like, hey, you fan, if we win, please visit the marketing table to pick up your free coupon. So what are we doing right away? We're making it difficult for the fan to actually get that free chicken by having to make a special, how it blew me away that how most teams, I think, get this. You're at either the ushers have the coupons, they're passing them out, or they're passing them out as people going out the gate or whatever. I'm not making my fan go to a specific table to pick up this one-off coupon to get a free piece of chicken in the morning, right? Probably totally unrelated to what you said, but it just came top of mind.
No, it really does reflect on the idea of customer service. It's a design thinking concept, which I don't remember I had a pretty in-depth design thinking conversation on the podcast recently, but it's just like thinking through how you want people to experience your experience and then creating it in a way that reflects what you want the person to feel. And I feel like a lot of times when we're dealing with, and this has gone off from like sales and, but I guess it goes with thinking differently, is that we think too much about like what's easiest for us, right? In our job and our role. And if you go back a little bit to when Richard Howell was on the podcast, who's a super smart guy from England, he talked about tickets being the only industry that's set up to what's easiest for the people doing the job, not for the people who are supporting the job by being customers. And I think that things like this definitely reflect that. And empowering your customers empowering your team to serve your customers with empathy and with thoughtfulness, it should be a winning formula. But all too often it's something that doesn't necessarily get handled that way.
Yeah. Yeah. So even thinking about, okay, how can we improve customer service and whiteboarding the situation with your staff, right? How many teams routinely do innovation workshops, with their staff on how they can improve and how they can do better, right? Probably not a lot. Like, I'm about to state a week from Friday, I start back and I'm teaching sports revenue, which is a class I teach at SMU. And the first day, like, we're going to talk about, hey, give me your 3 best ideas on how you can improve revenue, how you can grow revenue, right? And let's just whiteboard the whole thing. Let's put everything up on the board and let's identify the best philosophies and things like that. And hopefully at that level, I'm hoping for them to think about, customer service, all the different elements that you can do to grow revenue and to make sure that fans keep coming back and they're stair-stepping up your revenue chain. So many teams think about the home run. How can I get you to buy the most possible, package, the biggest package, the most number of games, the most dollar amount now? Rather than, okay, how can I get you in? How can I give you great service? How can I stair-step you up and build a long-term relationship with this organization that you're going to stay with me no matter what happens on the field, no matter if I'm here or not, you're going to be a long-term fan. And that stair-step approach to selling helps build into that fandom, right? Fandomness. So,
lifetime fan value is a term that I've used over the years countless times. And it's something that should be at the heart of all our business decisions.
Yeah. So I have one that my dogs are barking. I don't know if you hopefully can't hear them.
We're a dog friendly podcast here, don't you worry.
Yeah. Well, they're tearing up my street out in front of my house, so the dogs are just going pretty much nuts. And I tried to put them in the back room, but they're getting impatient. But I have one point about this idea of thinking differently. We just had the Winter Classic here in Dallas, right? With the Stars and the Preds played on New Year's Day at the Cotton Bowl, which is about 1.5 miles from my house. And the presentation that they did was so great because it embraced everything Texas, right? I mean, for this whole week after the Winter Classic, the Bridgestone Winter Classic, I should give credit to Bridgestone. The Bridgestone Winter Classic, they were talking about in the market about the pig races and the sheep busting for 5-year-olds and the horses that were on the Cotton Bowl floor, and the whole presentation and things like that, and they embraced everything Texas, right? And then I was watching, and no offense to the Idaho Potato Bowl, but I was watching that and there was about a third crowd, right? And I don't everything I've ever heard about, Idaho, the one time I've been there, it's a great place. It's a great place to go. They've got all these cool stuff. It's really outdoors.
It is a beautiful state.
So, what are you doing on your one-off bowl game to embrace everything Idaho, everything Boise, to show and improve? And all of the bowl games did this, right? What am I doing to highlight Orlando with everything on the interaction in the show and everything like that around the bowl game,
I've got oranges in my trophy. It's it's Florida, baby.
I mean, most of the bowl games now are just big, television production sites, right? Mm-hmm. But still, for me, I'm a big believer that building that lifetime fan, the 4 things to get that total fan is, they're involved in the sport, whether they're supporting their kid, coaching, youth sports or whatever. They're buying merchandise. They're tuning in and watching. But number 1 is they're attending games. I don't think you can necessarily build a lifelong fan without them experiencing your game, you're in real time, live. I think that's part of the process. And I think we've taken the eye off that ball because media rights is so great. We don't have to worry about the revenue. I teach a revenue class. Revenue's great. But attendance and fans, butts and seats and building, having that experience of seeing a live event then makes me want to tune in and watch it on TV, then wants me to buy a hoodie, then wants me to be involved in coaching my kid, things like that. And the being live at the game, and that's one thing that I think we've taken the ball off of a lot. I mean, look, you hear MLB all day long talk about revenue, right? But attendance has been going down over the course of X number of years, right? And for me, I hate to see that because I think your sound is out. No sound.
I was going to say, and the numbers that they report are brutal. But and if they're saying they've lost 10% or so of attendance over the last few years, it's got to be closer to 50 or 75% because those who are you going to believe, them or your lying eyes?
Yeah. Look,
And I think the media rights, the money is great, but the thing is the unintended consequences of these things. And you have to, they become where subservient to the media companies, whereas the media companies wanted to invest in sports because there was something of value there, and like the whole value chain has become skewed. And it's causing all these unintended consequences.
The great thing about attendance numbers is I can make them tell the story that I want to tell, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
No matter what. I can find that one, we're up 9% in that particular section in that row. Up 9%. You know, I can find a positive story in any attendance number, right? Yeah. But am I really telling the true story of the health of my sport, the health of my organization, right?
Yeah, and this goes back to really just like the basis of my work, and that's if you're not being honest with yourself, there's not a lot that I can do to help you. And I think that's like, as you approach the year of thinking differently and you're talking to people, you know, you're teaching your kids about revenue at SMU and you're talking to people about doing things differently or changing their approach, the number one thing, the place to jump off from is like, I need to be honest with myself about what I'm really dealing with. Because until I'm honest about what I'm dealing with, I can't create change.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that's probably the best place to leave that. Ken, where do people find you? I want to plug the social for tick sales, Twitter chat on Sunday nights, but where else can we find you?
Well, you can find me on LinkedIn, of course, and then on Twitter at KT Sports Market. On Twitter, and then on Sunday nights, Dave, thank you. For about 10 years, between Tuesday and Sunday.
Plug.
I've been doing a social for ticket sales, which is the hashtag is social, the number 4, tick sales, chat, just talking about ticket sales best practices and marketing, which are highly combined, for an hour every Sunday night at 8 o'clock Central Time, so 9 o'clock Eastern. So, love to have you join, listen. I'm telling you, we didn't talk about Twitter very much, but I mean, Twitter is such a great tool to build your network, you know, within the industry and to find out how to get better at your job.
That's right.
How you can think different.
Exactly. And follow, you know, I think I'm going to start putting together a little bit of a Twitter list for people who I think approach these things in a unique or contrarian fashion. So, Ken, thank you so much for doing this, my friend.
You bet. Thanks, Dave. Anytime.
Well, what did you think of my conversation with Ken Troupe? Let me know by sending me an email. It is my name. It's Dave at davewakeman.com. You can also visit my website, and I would love it if you did. It's www.davewakeman.com. You'll find all kinds of great stuff there. One thing I didn't mention in the intro, and I guess this encourages you to listen to the very end, is that I am putting together a road show. It is still in the planning stages, but I should have something to announce probably in the next 2 weeks about a upcoming trip to London, to Manchester, and to Edinburgh. I mean, it sounds great to me. It's going to be awesome. So you're going to want to keep an eye on my website because that's probably the first place that I'm going to announce it. If that's not the first place, the second place will be in the Talking Tickets newsletter, which you can find the link to by visiting my website and clicking on the Get Talking Tickets newsletter link at the very top of the page. As always, I'd dig it if you would hook up with me on the social media. You can find me on LinkedIn. Just search my name, Dave Wakeman. You can also follow me on Twitter. As I have been saying now for almost 2 years, if you know the guy who has the @DaveWakeman Twitter handle, I'd love it. I need it. I want it. I was so excited when they were going to purge these dormant usernames. I wanted Dave Wakeman so bad. I still haven't got it. But so I'm at David Wakeman on the Twitter. If you like what I'm doing on the podcast, I'd love it if you'd share it with colleagues, friends, people you think could learn something from these conversations that I have. It means a lot to me. It helps keep the podcast growing. And it's just really, I've been overwhelmed to find that people have found some of these conversations so useful and so impactful on the way that they approach their business. So if you do, please share with people that you think will gain something from it. Secondly, if you've been sharing, if you dig the podcast and you haven't become a subscriber, why not? We're on most of the podcast platforms now, if not all of them. So get it wherever you can get all your podcasting listening. Get it in your ear holes, right? And then finally, if you share it, if you subscribe to the podcast, and if you are so inclined, I would love it if you'd leave a review or a rating. Again, these things help make sure that people uncover the podcast. It helps encourage people to continue to come on the podcast, and it makes sure that I have the ability to continue to deliver great conversations, great ideas to you and your organization. So please do that for me. As always, I want to thank my friends at Booking Protect for being my partner on the Business of Fun podcast. If you didn't get a chance to meet us at INTIX, what happened? Where were you? We were there. We had a great time. But make sure you check them out at the Ticketing Professionals Conference coming up in Birmingham, England. Or just check them out on their website, www.bookingprotect.com. Find out how you can give your customers world-class customer service, a better buying experience, and how you can create a new stream of revenue for your organization. I had someone who will remain nameless sent me an email and said one of the nice things about working with Booking Protect is the fact that as great as the product is, the people are just as good. And I couldn't agree more. So check them out. Connect with Simon and Kat and Kath and Abby, on social media or on LinkedIn. Tell them I told you to say hello. They're as good as they are at delivering refund protection. They're just as good as people. So check them out, bookingprotect.com. Finally, make sure that you don't miss our new ebook, What Matters in Ticketing Now. It's super cool. It's 40 people from all over the world. South America, North America, Europe, Australia. I don't know if I got anybody from Asia, but I guess that looks like a good opportunity to do something new. It's awesome. Like I said at the start, Kate Imrakowski sent me an email, and she said, this is amazing. If everybody put this to use, it would be like having the coolest, greatest venue in the world. And I couldn't agree more. The people's ideas in this thing are so generous and so great. It's really turned out way better than I could have hoped for. It's pretty to look at. It's awesome, and you can get it by going to the Booking Protect blog. So that's www.bookingprotect.com/blog/. And you'll get it. You can sign up there, and then over the next couple days, you will see us announcing a webinar with some takeaways, key themes, action items from my point of view that add additional value to you and maybe help you be able to put some of these ideas to work in your organization. So, keep an eye on the podcast, keep an eye on the blog, get the Talking Tickets newsletter. All of this stuff will be there. So thank you again for listening. Since this is the first episode since I got back from INTIX, thank you to everybody who came to our sessions. I was so thrilled to be able to share Gabe Johnson's ideas, Angela Higgins' ideas, Martin Gameltoft's ideas on the discounting panel, and I was so thrilled for all of you to come and see Simon Mab and Frederick Awad and Ghislaine Bowman talk about customer service. The feedback on both of them was really good. If you've heard something you liked or dug, send me an email, dave@davewakeman.com. Let me know your key takeaway from INTIX. And until next time, thank you so much for listening. I'll talk to you soon. Take care.